Rifles, pistols, shotguns. What's the best gun for home defense? Let's talk about that. Welcome to the Patriot Training YouTube channel. My name is Clay Howell. I'm the owner and head firearms instructor at Patriot Training. The purpose of this video is to discuss the difference between rifles, pistols, and shotguns and determine which is the best for you for home defense. Let's make one thing perfectly clear as we get into this. There are no solutions in the gun world. There are merely trade-offs. You trade off one benefit for another. So what might be right for one might not be right for another person, just depending on the circumstance. So let's get that out of the way before we begin. Therefore, what we want to do is we want to give you a couple of pros and a couple of cons for each platform so that you can have a better, easier time to figure out what's best for you. And as always, you must remember, it doesn't matter which platform you get, it doesn't matter which platform you choose, you must get some good quality training on that platform in order to maximize your chances for success. Let's start with a shotgun. And yes, this is a toy. It's also a representation of a home defense shotgun that many people use. The shotgun has many different pros, and it has some cons too. Among the pros, it can be, with the correct load and in home distances, it can be the most powerful of the three platforms, rifle, pistol, shotgun. A 12-gauge shotgun loaded with double-aught buckshot is really hard to beat when it comes to power. Speaking of loads, the 12-gauge shotgun can have many different uses. It has loads that are effective. You know, I live in Tennessee, and it has loads that are effective for birds and small game, and it has loads that are effective for medium-sized game, larger birds, larger game, all the way up to deer and bear. There are effective loads all the way through the spectrum when you have a good 12-gauge shotgun. So a definite pro is the wide variety of things you can do with the gun. A shotgun can be very inexpensive. My home defense shotgun is a Mossberg Maverick 88. At the time of the filming of this video, they retail for about $270, and that just cannot be beat for a high-quality 12-gauge shotgun. You'd be hard-pressed to find a pistol or a rifle that would sell for less. That is just, you know, the cream of the crop when it comes to the most price-effective. Speaking of price, let's remember this. Don't go into debt to do any of this. Don't buy a gun now that you're going to have to sell off in 2 months when the car's tire goes flat. If you're financing your freedom with credit, you're doing it wrong. Debt is not a force multiplier. So make sure you save a little bit of money on the side in order to buy whatever choice you decide to go with. Cons to the shotgun. Limited number of rounds. My Mossberg Maverick 88 holds 7 in the tube, and of course I have it in a closet ready configuration, which means there's no rounds in the chamber. I also have a card on the stock and on the side of the receiver to maximize the number of rounds I have. I have 6 and 6, so the 12 plus the 7 makes for 19 rounds I could potentially fight with. That said, there are many professional instructors out there on the shotgun, myself included, who say you will probably, in a home defense scenario, fight with the ammunition in the gun and on the gun, so make sure you bring enough. So a con is definitely the limited number of rounds. Additionally, when we're talking about a 12 gauge, we're talking about recoil, and unless you take some good classes and get some good practice behind that, mitigating that recoil can be a very daunting challenge. So, you know, the 12 gauge, it kicks, nobody argues that, it kicks like a mule, and so the recoil is definitely, of the 3 platforms, the recoil on the shotgun is going to be the most, so that is definitely a con. Let's talk about a pistol next. And of course here I have a blue plastic pistol used for demonstrations, not an actual pistol, but you get the idea. A pro with a pistol is that it is of a medium price. You can get a good Glock or Smith & Wesson these days for about $500, $600, $700. It's not overly expensive. It's not overly cheap. It's right there in the middle. Just kind of like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Not too hot, not too cold, right? Another pro for a pistol is, unless you just get a full-size duty handgun, you can probably, with the mid-size or with a subcompact, you can also implement that handgun as your daily carry. And so this pistol could hypothetically fill a couple of roles for you in those scenarios. A pistol holds a lot more rounds than a shotgun, whereas my home defense shotgun has 7 rounds in the tube. A Glock 19, which is what this is based off of, which is probably your standard model that you would want to look at to begin with, holds 15 rounds in the magazine, plus you can carry with 1 in the chamber because this is a drop-safe platform. So you have 16 rounds as opposed to the 7 in the magazine that I have with my home defense shotgun. So you have more rounds. It's not the most, but again, it's a happy medium. And when it comes to home defense, one thing that you might want to look at with a pistol is it's going to be extremely maneuverable. It is the most maneuverable of the 3 platforms, so there's an advantage there. Cons with the pistol. The pistol, the handgun, is going to be the weakest of the 3. It's barely better than a knife. If you look up statistics, it typically takes several pistol shots in order to end a fight. So you need to be aware of that in the beginning from the outset, and you need to have that in your mind that marksmanship is going to be absolutely critical. Being able to deploy it is absolutely critical. Speaking of which, with a rifle and a shotgun, you have 4 points of contact. You have hand, shoulder, cheek. That's 4 points of contact with both a rifle and a shotgun. With a pistol, you have only 2 points of contact, or even 1 in some scenarios if you're shooting one-handed. So therefore, it can be the most difficult of the 3 platforms for most people to get proficient with. So you're going to definitely have to take some training, definitely have to put some practice in with your handgun so that you can shoot accurately and so that you can shoot under pressure effectively. Now let's talk about a rifle. And again, I have a substitution. I have a dummy rifle, not a real rifle here. And that's okay because it's very useful to use something like that. To give an example, a rifle, a couple of the pros. An AR-15 style rifle has maximum ammo capacity. The standard magazine in an AR-15 holds 30 rounds, so you could have 30 rounds at your leisure, ready to rock and roll in your AR-15 with a standard loadout without any additional magazines, just 30 rounds in that one magazine. That's the most of any of the 3 platforms. The AR-15 rifle is powerful and it's proven. It's very effective. Many instances of AR-15s performing very well in self-defense, and of course their brethren in the military are used daily, so to put down the enemy. So it's definitely a proven fight stopper, no doubt about it there. It's one of the best things that you can pick up to defend yourself. Cons. Of course, there's going to be an issue of cost. Of the 3 platforms, an AR-15, a decent AR-15, as of the filming of this video, a decent one was about $1,000. And that was by far and away the most expensive of the 3. Another con is the perception. Even though obviously the toy demo here was brown, a great many AR-15s are black, and they are perceived as the evil black rifle. And there is anecdotal evidence of prosecutor in many jurisdictions, those prosecutors trying to sway things because somebody defended their home with an AR. The shotgun tends to be more friendly to the anti-gunners, and the handgun tends to be kind of in the middle. Speaking of perception, speaking of anti-gunners, let me just say that voting Republican doesn't mean that you're voting pro-gun. Vet your candidates, because many times people vote Republican and all they're doing is they're voting for the party that will infringe on their rights just a little bit slower. That's all. So definitely, put your candidates through the ringer. Make sure you're voting for the right people for office. Yes, I hear the complaint all the time. It's the lesser of 2 evils. And until Jesus Christ himself runs for office, every single election you ever vote in will be the selection of the lesser of two evils. So don't give me that baloney. That garbage is just no-go. Just keep that in mind. But anyways, back to the AR-15, there's definitely a perception, especially in liberal precincts, about, you know, it being an assault weapon or something such like that. And of course, that's totally garbage, but that's still the element that you'll have to go up against when it comes time for court if your state does not have castle doctrine like Tennessee does. So definitely keep that in mind as well. The shotgun tends to be more universally accepted as reasonable. So keep that in mind. Well, folks, that about does it for this video. We didn't go into a couple of key things, and the reason why is because that's a topic for a video of its own day, and one of those things is going to be over-penetration. If you have a good defensive round, it will probably be capable of penetrating all the way through and through on a human body. So over-penetration is always a consideration. That's why rule number 4 exists. Be aware of your target and what's beyond your target, because a bullet can travel through a human body. And so that's one thing we did not discuss in here. All 3 platforms have the possibility of doing that. I would say the pistol is the least likely with proper defensive rounds. I would say buckshot and a shotgun at a home defense distance is probably middle of the pack. And then a rifle probably has the greatest capacity to have over-penetration. That means to go through the intended target. That said, there are going to be variations just depending on your ammunition selection and things of that sort. So always bear in mind rule number 4, be aware of your target and what's beyond it so that you don't accidentally hit something that you do not intend to hit. You are responsible for that bullet up until its final resting place. Another factor that we did not get into is, and it needs to be addressed is, some precincts, some states, some areas, some counties, some what have you, they are more favorable to one of these platforms over another. So that definitely has to play into what your selection is. And of course, there's always going to be minor differences. You might say, for example, if you have a penchant for an AR-15, but you live in certain states, you might be limited to a 10-round magazine, and therefore that puts the shotgun much, much closer to on par. So, in that state, it's probably more liberal, and you probably want to pick a shotgun for the appearance sake anyway. So bring all these things into consideration. I'm just talking about some of the general pros and the cons of each and every platform, and so there's a lot more out there. We could make a 4-hour video and not touch on all of it, so make sure that you take those into consideration as well. And folks, that about wraps it up for this video. What say you? I would love to hear from you in the comments section. Hit like, hit subscribe, and click that notification bell so that you can find out when the next Patriot Training video is released. And as always, I must remind you, you don't have to be a Patriot to train, but you do have to train if you want to be a Patriot. Take care.